But it is the derby, and we do need to quickly mention that because I think that's probably the game of the weekend. Milan have their own problems, right?
They have lots of problems.
They're top of the table with 9 points, but we're still saying they've got lots of problems.
That's Inter.
Oh, Inter. Sorry, I said Inter. Yes.
No, I know that.
Milan
obviously
don't get that nice sort of the nice part of it. They just have the problems.
They just unfortunately have the problems. Although they are at least winning matches, albeit with a 1-0 victory that looks very shoddy. But either way, it looks like it's Marco Giampaolo against Antonio Conte, a philosopher versus a pragmatist. But right now, Giampaolo can't be a philosopher because he's trying to figure out what to do with this team that doesn't have any of the skills that he really wants to play his style of football. We know he's not a plan B man, but he's playing with a plan B. Now he's searching for a plan C and D because it all seems to be falling a little bit apart over there. Do we think this is an easy win for Inter?
I don't think it's easy because it's the derby, but just to sort of, get into some of the problems he's having. We've talked on the show about Piontek and how he plays, and, Giampaolo used to play 4-3-1-2, comes in and within one game goes, actually, I don't know if Piontek can play in a front two, so let's change it. Then he's tried to go back to having a number 10, which was Paqueta at the weekend. Paqueta, in the post-game, he's criticising Paqueta for being too Brazilian and not sort of sticking to the shape that he has. Paqueta's then, immediately goes out on social and posts a video of himself doing a trick in the game and so is proudly Brazilian. You think, blimey, this is early for you to be taking, shots between players and managers.
Because it's become too much now. Everything Giampaolo keeps saying is, I need to knock this out of you, I need to knock this out of you. It's more like you have to adapt to my game. I'm not here to bring out the best in you. That's always been my point that I dislike Giampaolo about because we have philosophers, and a lot of the times this philosophy does come first. But with Giampaolo, it seems like, listen, I don't like you for doing these things, and these are the negatives, so I'm going to fix those negatives. He never looks around you necessarily and be like, these are your positives, so let me try to find a way to bring those out instead. And that's something that I also used to criticize Conte for, because what Conte did was take your weaknesses and make them strengths. I get that, but he never tried to work on what actually is very good about you.
So there's two ways of coaching. That you can be my tactics, and I'm going to fit the players around my tactics. Or you say, you're the players, and I'm going to fit my tactics to match up with the players.
Yeah.
And what Giampaolo does is he wants to play a certain system, and he gets the players to try and buy into it. And some players will fall by the wayside because they can't do what he wants them to do. And that's one problem of that system. But the manager, he knows what system he wants to play. He knows the strengths of it. He knows the weaknesses of it. Managers or coaches that do that, when they try and change to another system, they will always look at the fault in the other system. And when things go wrong, they go, I'm not quite sure how to handle it because I don't play that system. So these are the faults, these are the things that happen when I don't play my system, so I don't like doing it. So they'll always go back to the system they like.
See, he's trying to adapt with Sousa because, Sousa, he's desperate to play in a certain role, and now he knows Sousa really loves to play out on the right. So he's trying to do that. My point is that every philosopher at least has to compromise on certain things.
But it depends who you compromise with.
Yeah.
Depending on what player. If you think that player's never going to be my sort of player, there's no point compromising that because you're going to make your tactics worse for the sake of a player that you don't particularly like.
So is management at fault for not buying the right players for him? Because he's not using any of them.
Well, he came in with most of those, the players that are playing now, most of the players. All the players that played for Gattuso.
This is a total aside, but just off the back of what Stewart was saying, I was reading something, an old interview with Ancelotti this week, and he was talking about one of his greatest career regrets was when he was at Parma. They had a deal lined up, in his telling, they had a deal lined up to get Baggio, and he looked at his team and said, well, I play 4-4-2, I don't have a role for Baggio. And he said that basically, that moment with hindsight, became a huge turning point for him in terms of how he approached things, because he was like, such a regret to not have coached a player that good and done what you could have done with him because you had this idea of a system. And of course, it's interesting now because he's playing a 4-4-2, but he's making it whatever he wants it to be.
Yeah. That's how you learn, right?
To me, that's, I'd much rather have a manager who is open-minded. I think Allegri was good for that at Juventus. I think he was always adjusting to what he had. But it's certainly true that you can win by being rigid. You're right, there's two styles that, we can have preferences,
Conte.
but...
Conte came in with a 4-2-4 and was insistent on that. And they already had Pirlo, and they were like, we have Pirlo. And he also adjusted,
Yeah, it's
despite
true.
being
That
a
is
man
true.
who's very strong with his things.
Yeah.
This is my point. You have to, at times, just look at the players you have. And there's a lot of... Suso deserves to play where he wants to play. I think Çalhanoğlu is actually perhaps the best player for Giampaolo. He seems to be taking in the mechanism... Oh, I don't even
Mechanism.
know. Mechanism
That's
of the
the word
game
you're
very
looking-
well.
yeah.
Thank you very much, Stewart. But there's just other problems in that side. And either way, what do you think the prediction is?
I think, again, as we sort of have to always qualify the derbies, the derby is the derby, but Inter should win. Inter, despite their problems, have looked better to me than Milan so far this season.
Going into last season's game near the end of the season, when Milan were the team playing well and Inter were all over the place, Spalletti was going to get the sack, and Spalletti got his tactics absolutely right on the day.
He
It
did.
changed the whole end of the season. But I'm still going to go for Inter.
Oh, Spalletti's a maestro, though. Giampaolo has to prove us
Spalletti's a
wrong.
maestro.
I do think he's a very
Oh
good
my
tactician.
goodness.
I think that he's not a very good manager, but I think as tactics go, I mean, his Roma side at times used to blow us away.
That's true.
That's
true.
The first time round as well.
Especially the first time round.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.